I didn't value experience as much as character, creativity, and common sense, which I suppose was related to my having started Bridgewater 2 years out of school myself, and my belief that having an ability to figure things out is more important than having specific knowledge of how to do something. It seemed to me young people were creating sensible innovation that was exciting. Older folks who did things the old way held no appeal. I should add, though, that putting responsibility in the hands of inexperienced people doesn't always work out so well. Good morning, everybody, and it is time for some more reading. I'm really excited. Principles, Ray Dalio. I'm really enjoying this book. It is the story of Ray Dalio to start off with. Later on, he's going to talk about other things, such as the kinds of principles that he follows and how he invests and the rules that he has. So it's a really great book. Let's get back into it. What are we up to for today? The next foothold for Bridgewater. So he lost his company. He's bringing his company back to life. He's making mistakes. He's sharing what happened, why it happened, and how he managed to fix up some of those things. Square Enix USA. I am very good, thank you. It is good to meet you. Let's get into the reading and let's learn some amazing things. And I'll give you my commentary. Today, I'm also really excited because it's cash flow night, which means that we're going to have a number of people coming to join us. We're going to play cash flow. We're going to practice all of the investing things that we're learning from this book. But not only practicing in a way that you're not going to lose money because you're just playing with play money, but you're actually tricking your brain and learning some really amazing things. We've made the game more realistic, and it is so much fun, but at the same time, you're also learning, and we're going to talk about how to apply what you learn in the game into real life. So at the end, I will share, and we'll probably go for about 10 minutes. And at the end, I will share how you can come and join us and how you can get your investing and finance questions answered, which is really exciting. But for now, let's get into the reading. And then at the end, I will share how you can join us at Cashflow and tonight. And if you're watching the recording on Zoom, which we're going to transfer to YouTube, I'll tell you how to get the link to YouTube. And then you can see this book and the other books that we read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Art of Thinking Clearly. Been reading some really amazing books. So let's get into it and do some reading and learn some great things. The next foothold for Bridgewater. As the 1980s came to an end, we were still a very small company with just 24 employees. Bob introduced me to Giselle Wagner in 1988. She would be my partner in running the non-investment side of the business for 20 years. Dan Bernstein and Ross Waller joined in 1988 and 1989, respectively, both fresh out of Dartmouth College. At that time, and for quite a while longer, I tended to hire people just out of school who didn't have much experience but were smart, determined, and committed to the mission of making the company great. I didn't value experience as much as character, creativity, and common sense, which I suppose was related to my having started Bridgewater 2 years out of school myself, and my belief that having an ability to figure things out is more important than having specific knowledge of how to do something. It seemed to me young people were creating sensible innovation that was exciting. Older folks who did things the old way held no appeal. I should add, though, that putting responsibility in the hands of inexperienced people doesn't always work out so well. Some painful lessons that you'll read about later taught me that it can be a mistake to undervalue experience. I always believe you need a bit of a combination. You need some older people with experience, and then you add the younger people, and the older people mentor the younger people. The younger people will force the older people to be a little bit more open-minded. It's interesting because when you have a look at nursing homes, for example, it's just old people. When you look at primary school, it's just young people. And so there's conflict, there are issues because there's nobody who's in charge and nobody who's being taught and all of those different kinds of things. There have been some really great experiments, and this can work for your business too. If you have a business, for example, make sure you have a good mix, because they had a primary school that was inside an old people's home, inside an aged care facility. And what ended up happening was that the young kids had older people who would tell them what to do and would teach them and would give them experience, even better than the teachers who were middle-aged. These older people had even more experience. And so kids need a hierarchy to live in. And for the older people, it was great too, because they had the chance to stay young and to stay fresh and to look at new technology and the young people were keeping them enthusiastic and full of energy. So really great to have a good combination of both. By now, the initial 5 million from the World Bank had grown to 180 million in investments that we were managing for a variety of clients. But we were still trying to grab a larger foothold in the institutional investment business. When Rusty Olson, CIO of Kodak's pension fund, approached us to solve an investment problem, we jumped at the chance. Rusty was a remarkable innovator and a man of great character who started at Kodak in 1954 and took over its pension fund in 1972. He was widely respected as a leader in the pension fund world. We'd been sending him our research for a while, and in 1990 he wrote us looking for our option on a big concern of his. The Kodak portfolio was heavily invested in equities, and Rusty was worried about what would happen in an environment in which the value of his assets fell badly. He had been trying to come up with a way to hedge himself against this risk without reducing his expected return. Rusty's fax arrived on a Friday afternoon, and we leapt into action. Getting a client this prestigious and innovative would make a big difference to us. We knew we could do a uniquely great job for Kodak because we knew a lot about bonds and financial engineering, and we had a historic perspective unmatched in the industry. Bob Prince, Dan Bernstein, and I worked non-stop throughout the weekend, analyzing the Kodak portfolio and the strategy Rusty was considering. Then we wrote him a long memo laying out our thoughts. Just as I had deconstructed the business of a chicken producer in the 1970s and many other companies since, we broke down Kodak's pension fund into its constituent parts to better understand the machine. Our proposed solutions drew on the portfolio engineering ideas that would later become core to Bridgewater's unique way of managing money. Rusty invited Bob and me to Rochester, and we came home with the $100 million account. That was a game changer. Not only did it bring us a lot of credibility, it provided us with a reliable source of revenue at a time when we needed it. Discovering the holy grail of investing. That sounds really exciting. From my earlier failures, I knew that no matter how confident I was in making any one bet, I could still be wrong, and that the property diversification was the key to reducing risks without reducing returns. If I could build a portfolio filled with high-quality return streams that were properly diversified, they zigged and zagged in ways that balanced each other out, I could offer clients an overall portfolio return much more consistent and reliable than what they could get elsewhere. Decades earlier, the Nobel Prize-winning economist Harry Markowitz had invented a widely used model that allowed you to input a set of assets along with their expected returns, risks, and correlations, showing how similarly those assets have performed in the past, and determine an optimal mix of those assets in a portfolio. But his model didn't tell you anything about the incremental effects of changing any one of those variables or how to handle being uncertain about those assumptions. But then I was terribly fearful about what would happen if my assumptions were wrong. So I wanted to understand diversification in a very simple way. I asked Brian Gold, a recently graduated math major from Dartmouth, who joined Bridgewater in 1990, to do a chart showing how the volatility of a portfolio would decline and its quality, measured by the amount of relative return to risk, would improve if I incrementally added investments with different correlations. I'll explain it in more detail in my economic and investment principles, which is obviously further down the book. So to learn from this, we need to understand that, yes, markets do all sorts of really crazy things, but they do at certain times follow certain patterns. And if you understand those patterns, if you can get a computer or if your brain can see and understand those patterns, you can use that to your advantage. So I use a number of different tools in order to be able to make forecasts about markets. I use this newspaper here in order to be able to also analyze a couple of different things that give me a better picture, a better understanding of what could be happening. So I always call it educated risk. So educated decision making, so that you are thinking and you are analyzing and you have data and you use that data. You use some historical things in order to be able to predict where things might go. So they might not go that way, but obviously more times than less times, it's going to go in the direction that you might think it will go because of certain factors and because of certain things that you see that relate to things that happened in the past. Now, obviously, a sudden war or different other things are going to do different things. So let's say that you are predicting that oil will go down based on where it's been for the last couple of years, but all of a sudden there's a war. Now, if you know that that war is coming, you can use that to your advantage because you know that it's potentially going to go in a different direction to what you might think. So the more information you have, you also don't want to be overanalyzing, but the more information you have, the more powerful you are. And the more you can use systems and algorithms and different other things, the better it is for you as well. That simple chart struck me with the same force I imagine Einstein must have felt when he discovered E equals mc squared. I saw that with 15 to 20 good uncorrelated return streams, I could dramatically reduce my risks without reducing my expected returns. It was so simple, but it would be such a breakthrough if the theory worked as well in practice as it did on paper. I call it the holy grail of investing because it showed the path to making a fortune. This was another key moment in our education. The principle we discovered applies equally well to all ways of trying to make money. Whether you own a hotel, run a technology company, or do anything else, your business produces a return stream. Having a few good uncorrelated return streams is better than having just one, and knowing how to combine return streams is even more effective than being able to choose good ones, though of course you have to do both. At the time, and still today, most investment managers did not take advantage of this. They managed investments in a single asset class. Equity managers managed equities, bond managers managed bonds, and so on. Their clients gave them money with the expectation that they would receive the overall return of the asset class, plus some added returns from the bets managers took by over and underweighing particular assets. For example, buying more Microsoft stock than was in the index. But individual assets within an asset class are generally about 60% correlated with each other. They all go in the same direction, which means that they go up or down together more than half the time. As the Holy Grail chart showed, an equity manager could put 1,060% correlated stocks into their portfolios, and it wouldn't provide much more diversification than if they'd picked only 5. It would be easy to beat those guys by balancing our bets in the way the chart indicated. Thanks to my process of systematically recording my investment principles and the results they could be expected to produce, I had a large collection of uncorrelated return streams. In fact, I had something like 1,000 of them because we traded a number of different asset classes. And within each one, we had programmed and tested lots of fundamental trading rules. We had many more high-quality ones to choose from than a typical manager who was tracking a smaller number of assets and was probably not trading systematically. I worked with Bob and Dan to pull our best decision rules from the pile. Once we had them, we backtested them over long time frames, using the systems to simulate how the decision rules would have worked together in the past. We were startled by the results. On paper, this new approach improved our returns by a factor of 3 to 5 times per unit of risk, and we could calibrate the amount of return we wanted based on the amount of risk we could tolerate. In other words, we could make a ton more money than the other guys with the lower risk of being knocked out of the game, as I'd nearly been before. I called it the killer system because it would either produce killer results for us and our clients, or it would kill us because we were missing something important. The success of this approach taught me a principle that I apply to all parts of my life. Making a handful of good, uncorrelated bets that are managed and leveraged well is the surest way of having a lot of upside without being exposed to unacceptable downside. As excited as we were about this new approach, we proceeded cautiously. We gave the system a 10% weight initially, and it made money in 19 of the 20 months in our test period. As we got more confident, I decided to reach out to a select group of investors I knew well about investing in the strategy with 1 million trial accounts. I knew that asking these institutional investors to invest such relatively modest amounts would make it hard for them to turn us down. I called the new product Top 5% at first because it comprised the best 5% of our decision rules. Later, I changed the name to Pure Alpha to convey that it consisted purely of alphas. Because Pure Alpha didn't have any betas, it didn't have any bias to go up or down along with any market. Its returns depended only on how good we were in outperforming others. Our totally new alpha overlay approach allowed investors to receive the return of their chosen asset class, the S&P 500 stock market, a bond index, commodities, whatever, plus the return from the portfolio of bets that we were making across all asset classes. As unprecedented as our approach was, We explained our logic carefully, showing why it was actually much less risky than traditional approaches. We also showed them how we expected the culminated performance to unfold and what the expected range of performance around that would be. For our clients, it was a bit like being presented with the design of a plane that had never flown before but looked radically better than any other plane on paper. Would anybody be courageous enough to get on board? Let's have a look. We'll finish this part. Some clients got the concepts and were excited to change the rules. Others either didn't understand or worked for organizations that refused to try cutting-edge things. Frankly, we were thrilled that any of them were willing to try. For over 26 years now, that new type of plane has flown exactly as we anticipated, making money in 23 of these years, having only modest losses in the other 3, and making more money in total for our clients than any other hedge fund ever. While the investment management concepts that underlie Pure Alpha eventually changed our industry, the journey from conception to general acceptance took many years of learning and grinding work by a group of dedicated partners. Okay, we will leave it there, but here's the lessons that you can take from this. If you are analytical, I once went and wanted to go to the casino with a friend of mine when I was at university. And what I did was I sat down for a whole 2 days and wrote down ideas on how it might work and strategies for what we might be able to do in order to be able to see if I could come up with something that would beat the system. I came up with something and it worked on the first day. It didn't work on the second day. It was probably something that will work 80% of the time. So it was really exciting and I enjoyed that. Now, if that is you, if you are that kind of person, then when you are working on your investing, and I would love to sit down with some of you and actually do this, for real, because it is just so much fun to analytical people. If that is you, then make sure that you spend some time focusing on coming up with strategies and ideas. The more you learn about these things, the more you can come up with ideas that might challenge the status quo of how things are currently done. Or you might find and discover something that already exists that somebody else created, or come up with something similar. Now, not everybody is analytical, and not everybody is willing to test out what is going on. And sometimes our ideas are not that good. So it's important, if you are analytical, to make sure that you back test and see whether this would have worked with other stocks in the past. That way you can test it without losing any money going ahead and actually putting it into place. However, if you are not analytical, then there is a very simple solution. Find people that are analytical. Find people that are willing to share their ideas. And if you can show your support to them to help them be able to go out and test their ideas, if you have computer skills or computer knowledge, or if you have the ability to be able to take that information and you have the money to be able to test it out, for example, then you are able to do that together with them in order to be able to get a great result together. You don't have to be analytical, but you can combine yourself with somebody else. Very often in life, we think that we have to do everything ourselves. Definitely not true. You want to align yourself and find people who are absolutely amazing, that complement you on the things that you are not so good at. Okay, we're going to leave it at that. If you enjoyed these readings, then you can watch the replays on YouTube. The Passive Cash Flow Club is where you'll find us on YouTube. We also publish sharing answers to your questions. So if you have questions, send them through on Instagram. I'll tell you how to get in touch. And then we'll put videos of those questions and the answers, if we haven't already answered them, on YouTube. So make sure when you go to YouTube, when you go to the Passive Cash Flow Club, make sure you hit subscribe so that you are able to actually be notified when those new videos come up, because who knows, one of those questions could be one that is relevant to you. And then you get to benefit by seeing the notification and being able to watch that video and correcting or changing something that you do, or learning a new skill with regards to that question that has come out. So if you would like to join us for cash flow or send me some of your questions, reach out on Instagram. You can find us at business_team_6_official. We would love to see you there, just like I really enjoy having you here today. So I really appreciate. Thank you so much for joining. So reach out on Instagram. It is better than Bigo because we're also recording on Bigo at the moment. Bigo is very, very spammy at the moment for me. So reach out on Instagram and I'll actually be able to see your message, as opposed to on Bigo where I just cannot see who actually watches the recordings and who doesn't, or who watches the live streams and who doesn't. So I am looking forward to seeing you on Instagram and getting your messages and your questions. And if you ask us about cash flow, and if you're watching the replay, if you ask us and it's not cash flow day, we will let you know when the next cash flow day is. I'll get my VA to send you a message and get you sorted so that you can come and join us and learn some amazing things and start to implement and put them into real life, because we want to see you achieving and investing and getting amazing results. So business_team_6_official. Get in touch, subscribe on the YouTube channel, The Passive Cash Flow Club, and remember to make the switch to unlock your rich.